Well, thank you for having us. I'm Dezaree Porter with ERC Specialists, and we are going to talk in detail about the Employee Retention Tax Credit. Okay, there's been a lot of buzz regarding this program. In fact, the IRS has recently put out a second notice regarding warning about third-party companies educating or popping up and offering to amend your 941s. What's happening right now are there are a lot of companies that are catching on the buzz. They want to be a part of this tax credit, and they are amending your 941s, which is the easy part, but leaving these companies with all the liabilities. They don't understand how they qualified, they aren't educated on the process, and they don't have the documentation needed to substantiate. So our company goal is and has always been to educate businesses, nonprofits, and organizations on the Employee Retention Tax Credit. We want you to understand the program, how it works, and we provide transparency on the qualifications surrounding the eligibility. We also assist with the documentation needed to support the claim. So if you are familiar with the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and even if you have already filed, it's probably very critical that you pay attention and you notice the documentation that's needed so that you can make sure that you are prepared. The Employee Retention Tax Credit actually came out around the same time as the PPP loan. And when it first came out, you could not qualify for both. So if you opted to take the PPP loan, you were disqualified from applying for the Employee Retention Tax Credit. That was initially, and there is some confusion still regarding that eligibility requirement. Now, if you did take the PPP loan, you are still eligible to potentially qualify for the Employee Retention Tax Credit. On March 11th, 2021, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, and that modified the program. Since then, it's been amended a number of times. This credit is a lot of money on the table. It's up to $26,000 per W-2 employee. It's based on 6 quarters, and each quarter has a dollar amount attached to it. You do have to qualify for this program. There are 3 different ways to potentially qualify. The first one is revenue reduction. Second is supply chain disruption due to government orders. And the third is full or partial suspensions due to government orders. I mentioned there are 6 quarters available. These are 3 quarters in 2020, quarters 2, quarters 3, and quarters 4. And then we'll be talking about 3 quarters in 2021, quarters 1, quarters 2, and quarters 3. For quarters in 2020, you must have 100 or less full-time employees to qualify for the year. And for 2021, you must have less than 500 full-time employees. Each quarter I mentioned has a dollar amount attached to it. For 2020, there is a $5,000 max for each employee and for the year. So quarterly or for the year, the maximum is $5,000 for 2020. The majority of the funding is available in 2021 with up to $7,000 per quarter per full-time employee that you qualify for, with a $21,000 max for the year. This is how they're getting to that $26,000. We're going to be discussing 2019, 2020, and 2021 data. 2019 is the baseline for pre-pandemic. So that's going to be our comparison for revenue, for supply chain, and for suspensions and business operations. So we're going to be comparing all the quarters to 2019. Again, 3 different ways to qualify. We're going to dive into each one of those, spending the majority of our time talking about full or partial suspensions, as we see most of the schools have impact related to that. Revenue reduction is probably the most straightforward way to qualify for the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and it's also the most familiar way to qualify for this credit. When the program first launched, the qualification was a 50% reduction of gross sales for 2020 quarters as compared to the same quarters in 2021. Compared to the same quarters in 2019. So you're comparing straight across from quarters 2, quarters 3, and quarters 4 in 2020 to the same quarters in 2019. When they amended the program, they added the 2021 qualifications. That's at a 20% reduction of gross sales. So if you experienced a revenue reduction of 20% for 2021, quarters 1, quarters 2, or quarters 3, as compared to those same quarters in 2019, then you may be eligible for this credit. Usually with revenue reduction, most organizations feel like if they didn't meet either that 50% or 20% reduction, they don't qualify for this program. And that's why it's really important that we talk about the other two eligibility requirements, because that opens the door up a lot, depending on the level of impact for your school. Supply chain disruption is a very interesting qualification. It's based off of government orders on your vendors. We don't see this impact schools a lot, but it does on occasion. These impacts could qualify a company regardless of revenue gain or loss. So even if you didn't lose revenue, you may still potentially qualify for the program. You're looking for more than a nominal impact of 10% or more on your business. So if you experience supply chain disruption during 2020 or 2021 that impacted your business operations more than a nominal impact of 10% or more, as compared to data from 2019, then this would be worth looking into. This typically would affect schools that maybe had an expansion that was started in 2019, a remodel, they were doing a renovation, and then their supplies were delayed due to the pandemic. You would have notices from your vendors saying, hey, due to the pandemic, we're unable to meet these timelines. It's going to be delayed. So we would just want to go through and document that. Again, you may qualify for one quarter. You might qualify for all 6. It depends on the level of impact from your business. This is where we're going to spend the majority of our time. It's talking about full or partial suspensions. When we talk about full or partial suspensions, most organizations think they must have been suspended completely to qualify. That's not actually the case with this. What we're looking for is more than a nominal impact of 10% or more on your business operations. So this could be a number of different things. Again, this is not related to revenue gain or loss, but you are looking for 10% or more of your business operations. So any of these suspensions that impacted your business model as compared to 2019, we want to go through and document that. We're looking at reduction in hours, inability to access equipment, reduction in services offered, reduction in capacity, travel restrictions, and actual suspensions. So when you're looking at this, you primarily want to focus first on your revenue producing operations. So if you had to modify your hours due to mandated cleaning or wellness checks or drop off and pickup, if you had inability to access equipment or spaces such as the cafeteria or dining hall, the libraries, gymnasium, auditorium, computer labs, if you went to virtual learning when in 2019 your business model was in-person learning, all of this needs to be documented to see if the level of impact for your school is more than a nominal impact of 10% or more. If you had a reduction in services offered, where you had to cancel or modify activities or events that were previously held in person. This could be sports, and not just sports. If you think about concessions, sports, dances, choir or band concerts, plays, graduation, holiday programs, assemblies, tutoring, after-school programs, summer camps, fundraisers, recruitment, activities or tours, open houses. If you had restrictions that were related to reduction in capacity, this could be spacing mandates. It could be adjusting that student to teacher ratio. It could be running more buses to accommodate the same amount of people. We saw this a lot with events that previously had unrestricted capacity. Now we're restricted to not more than X number of people in a space. So depending on what you had to do to adapt and modify to pivot during the pandemic, we want to look at your 2019 master calendar and really go through that and then compare that to what you did per the 3 quarters in 2020 and the 3 quarters in 2021. Travel restrictions, this could have been trips canceled, field trips canceled, conferences, conventions, senior trips, international trips, or what was the protocol if there were boarding restrictions or quarantine after travel, and actual suspension. So if your school was closed down during the pandemic, what was that timeline? Or what did you have to do if someone tested positive? What was the protocol that was in place? So this is a lot to take in. That's why we find it really is helpful to schedule an appointment, go through, have a staff meeting, someone who is in the day-to-day operations that would remember what activities were modified, what events were changed, and then compare that to your previous business model of 2019. You're going to put down which quarters you were impacted by the suspensions. It might be all of them. It might be one of them. It really varies. And it varies especially city, county, and state, because this is the first half of the process, is the school's documentation and their level of impact. The other part of it is you need government orders to validate this. So if there's not a government order in place on a city, county, or state level, then it doesn't matter the school's level of impact without that government order for all the quarters. So you definitely want to make sure that you're making that appointment, walking through the level of impact, and then either working with our team to verify those government orders that were in place, or that you have a team that's pulling those for you. A little bit about our company. ERC specialists ranges over 200 funding experts, from tax attorneys, consultants for the IRS, previous employees of the IRS, CPAs. Our director of fulfillment is on the American Payroll Association, as well as the board of the Utah Payroll Association. And members of our team have provided accounting and auditing services for agencies such as the FBI, the FDA, the SEC, U.S. Customs, the U.S. Postmaster General, and the U.S. and State Attorney General. We're actually looking to do things very different from most companies out there. We educate on the process. We primarily have 5 to 6 meetings with you to go over. We want to make sure you're in compliant on the front end before it becomes an issue later. Now, to get started, we have a website. It's erczone.com. And then you can also reach out to Maisha Harold. This is her phone number, 701-641-6656, as well as her email, mharold@erczone.com. She will schedule an appointment to help you walk through the program, give you an overview on that, as well as setting up a meeting to kind of document that level of impact that your school experienced. That's really going to be up to the school to determine if that is more than a nominal impact of 10% or more. But we find once you have that meeting and kind of write everything down, it makes it much easier. From there, we'll be able to go through the questionnaire and put everything in. We're going to be uploading payroll tax information, 941s, detailed payroll report. And if you received the PPP loan or specific grants, you'll upload that information as well. It takes our funding experts about 1 to 2 weeks to go through and get that assessment back to you. That's the credit amount that we found you qualify for. From there, we can review that with you. If you'd like us to file it for you, you have 2 different options. There's a prepay option. It's 10% of what you get, or if you'd like to do the pay later, it's 15% once you receive the checks. Right now, it's taking the IRS 7 to 8 months to process this overpayment, and you don't receive one lump sum. So depending on how many quarters you qualify for is how many checks you would receive. So if you qualified for all 6 quarters, it would be 6 checks. So there is a bit of a backlog as this program has become increasingly popular in the last quarter, especially. People are looking to claim this as it's time sensitive. You know, we are seeing the schools really benefit from the funding that is provided from this program. You know, some of our schools did not take advantage of the PPP loan because there were federal funding requirements with Title IX regulations. Because of the way they're distributing the funds as a payroll tax credit with this program, it's been such a benefit for these schools. You know, this is considered an overpayment on your payroll taxes. That's the vehicle they're using to distribute this credit if you qualify for it. So this is allowing schools to upgrade essential equipment, to do an expansion. We've talked to a number of schools that have been leasing their land for years that are now finally able to purchase that. And really, a lot of schools have been focused on enhancing their hiring and retirement benefits, retaining and rewarding the employees. That's been huge. Mental health benefits. So there's a lot of different things. This funding is not restricted in use. It can be used however you like. Unlike the PPP, where you had to use it for payroll, rent, utilities, this is not restricted. So there's been a lot of benefit from this, and it's really been life-changing money for a lot of the schools. I'm going to put Maisha's contact information back on the screen. And if you have questions, you can go to the website, erczone.com. You can also reach out to Maisha directly, or myself. I'm happy to answer any questions. And we'll also send a copy of this deck out as well. Let's see, we can also